Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Accession Everything Service Management Podcast. I'm Daniel Gilby, joined as always by my co-host, Sunil Duggal. And today we've got a very special guest joining us, Chris Williams from Community Fibre. Chris, you're the CIO there. I wonder if you'd just take a moment or two to introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Yeah, hi, thanks very much, Daniel. Chris Williams, I've been at Community Fibre now for just over 3 years. I joined, my previous history goes all the way back to Orange, that I joined around about 25 years ago now. I feel as though I'm a telco veteran at this stage, but I did various roles across Orange, EE, and BT, mainly around service management, hence my appearance today. But thoroughly enjoying the role of CIO at Community Fibre. Just to give you a couple of minutes or a second or two on Community Fibre, for those of you that don't know us, we're a broadband company. We're based in London. We cover predominantly the London area, but also down into Surrey, Sussex, borders of Hampshire, borders of Kent. We're a B2B, B2C, and a wholesale provider of broadband services. We provide broadband, TV, Wi-Fi, as well as voice services to our customers. And yeah, really enjoying my time playing with the fixed network as opposed to a mobile network.
Fantastic stuff. We'll drop a link to the website in the description for those folks who want to check that out.
Brilliant.
Sunil.
Okay, thank you very much, and great to have you with us, Chris. So one of the things that was really so exciting about having you join the podcast was that you have, as you just introduced yourself, have been in the space of delivering service for a considerable number of years. And I think one of the things that's really interesting is that, over that period of time, you will have seen a number of changes, particularly in and around the expectations of customers, the way in which they are looking for services to be delivered to them. And also behind the scenes, I suppose, the innovations that have impacted on the way in which those services have been delivered to customers. So I wonder whether you could just, a quick history through time, perhaps tell us what your view on some of those changes are, both expectations and, some of the innovations that have changed the way those services have been.
Yeah,
provided.
I mean, let's start with the history, I guess. I remember in 2000 sitting in a hotel at the outskirts of Reading with a bunch of flip charts and some clever people, having just about to launch, I think at the time, 3G, and this whole concept of data. What the heck are we going to do with data? Well, we could probably tell people about some sports results, or what's happening with their favorite celebrity, or what's happening with the news. But I remember data and services, apps, literally just not existing. And I look back now, and I mean, even things like WhatsApp or Facebook, or things that we take for granted. I mean, I think Facebook started in 2004 and WhatsApp started in 2009. And you think of innovation over history, and that period that we were innovating over is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. My daughter now thinks of Facebook, for example, as something that probably has been around for forever, and is not interested because it's so old-fashioned. So, things have changed tremendously during that time, and I've been lucky. I was there for the launch of 4G. I remember spending a huge amount of time up in Manchester leading up to that launch, and trying to get sites on board so that we could launch a fantastic mobile service on 4G in the UK. Again, we take that data speed and the ability to do things like we're doing today, video calling and the likes, absolutely for granted now. But it really wasn't that long ago that those things were coming through. In terms of customers, though, I think customers' expectations have changed so much over that period of time. Back in 2000, mobile was a luxury for many people. Mobile was something that maybe maybe 1 in 2, 1 in 3 people had. I remember the base being built. I think when I joined, Orange at the time had maybe 1 to 2 million customers. I think I was there for the celebration for 2 million customers.
Wow.
And yet nowadays, that is part of our lives. Everybody has a mobile, and really that remains the remote control for their life. And whether you're a mobile provider or a broadband provider, that mobile phone is absolutely at the center of all of our lives. I think today, and I have conversations quite regularly with my family on this, that they're all more obsessed probably in an evening than I am. Just using that phone all the time, every piece of communication, every message, every photo, sharing with family, friends, etc. And that's right at the heart of what they're doing. So from a customer's perspective, connectivity is just no longer a luxury. It's an absolute necessity. You need it for banking, finance. Many people are relying on that connectivity now for their health, and we'll see more of that, I think, in the future. So the expectation for the customer is that they're always online in some way. That connection is ubiquitous. They leave their house and they still remain online. They travel to work on the tube, they're still online. So yeah, that difference in expectations now is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
And then I think one more quick comment on that. I think the way that people want to deal and interact with us as a utility, for example, has changed as well. I remember the days where you offered a service, you put up a call center, that was fine. People would ring you up, you'd answer questions, and that was your interaction. These days, there's just nowhere near enough. People have got every channel that they want to interact with you through. So whether that's messaging channels, whether that's chat channels, whether that's IVR, self-service, voice, even Instagram, Facebook, and the likes are channels in their own right. So people want to get to you. They want 24/7 response. They want ubiquitous connectivity, and that's the baseline. And they really want that for 25, 30 pounds a month, which is also the other challenge.
For sure.
Dan has a really good question to follow on from that, but I just wanted to drop in with a very small anecdote. So earlier on today, in fact, I was talking to somebody and who's much younger than me, and I told him that when I first started work, we used the fax machine quite a lot. And he did not know what a fax machine was. I tried to explain it by saying it's like a photocopier, but rather than photocopying it to yourself, you photocopy it to somebody else somewhere else. I was like, and it is incredible, Chris, isn't it? How you've gone from in actually what is relatively a short period of time, right?
Yeah,
Quite incredible change.
That's right.
Sorry, Dan. Apologies.
No, it's quite all right. It's very interesting. You've got that expectation now, as you said, that service, the online availability is just there, right? It's on, and it's a very big problem when it's not on, right? Because of so many things relying on it. So perhaps another anecdote. I remember I was at a friend's years ago on a bit of a holiday up in Wales, and the power had gone out. Their kids came back in their house, and the first thing they asked was, is the internet back on? Not checking if the fridge, all of these other things, like, do the lights work? Is the internet on? And then, I remember my personal experience was, well, what are you doing this evening? Oh, I'm going to go online for a couple of hours, because it was an option to do that, and you'd have to then, the whole modem dial up and everything else. But yeah, now it's just there. It's pervasive, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So given that expectation then, and your sort of, your career, your tenure, if you like, within that the industry, could you tell us a little bit about maybe, a couple of projects? You must have been involved in some projects there that then kind of evolved the service to meet and work up to that expectation. Could you share some sort of insights around some things you've been perhaps personally involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most interesting was, I remember at EE being set some targets around drop calls. I remember customers at the time were wanting to make sure they maintained their voice calls with their friends and family for for much longer than they were able to at the time. And at the time, I'm sure these numbers are public record in some place or the other. We were dropping around about 10 million calls a week, and we set ourselves an ambitious target of trying to get that down to 1 million. You're always going to have some problem somewhere. The coverage isn't absolutely everywhere, but that was the task that we were set. And I remember looking at it and looking at what was available to me at the time in terms of information, and thinking, how on earth are we going to achieve this kind of reduction in drop calls? But working through it, working mobile site to mobile site, looking at the data that we've got, and trying to drive those improvements. Just a couple of anecdotes in terms of the extent that we went to try and improve these drop calls. And by the way, we made it down to the 1 million as well, which was fantastic. And ironically, now people are using WhatsApp voice, Messenger voice, other types of voice other than mobile networks as well. So possibly its importance has diminished slightly over time. But yeah, we would do things like we'd be driving, drive testing things like the M25, and making sure that we could go all the way around the M25 without dropping a call, and then working out that we had to do that in reverse as well as clockwise and anti-clockwise, because of the cell configurations, to make sure that those calls stayed connected. So we were doing that. I remember many trips on railway lines, always taking my devices with me so that I could actually be call testing during those trips. Forever running out of power because I had to find somewhere to plug the mobile into, because these things were quite a drain on power. But being particularly pleased when one day I managed to get from Paddington to Reading on the train without dropping a call. I'm not sure I could do that these days, actually. Yeah, being so super pleased that the work that we've done have managed to get me from Paddington to Reading. And then the final anecdote, I lived down in North Devon, and it was also a regular challenge of mine to hold a call from leaving the office in Bristol and getting all the way down to North Devon without dropping that call. But yeah, great sort of projects to be involved in. Great fun trying to drive that improvement, and something that was, we believed at the time, and I truly believe that to this day, that it was improving people's lives across the country, being able to have that kind of coverage.
So just a quick sort of follow-on question from that then. So, and forgive my perhaps ignorance here, but this is all coming off of the masts that we see, right? And
that's
they're
right.
there. So I was just thinking then, as that's the case, it must have been quite, not daunting, that's the wrong word, but certainly lots to take in when you start to look at geographical features and things like that. So the placements for these things, that you've got the overlap and so on. Was that something you got involved in at all, or was that kind of?
Yeah, a reasonable amount, and I got involved in a couple of ways, actually. One was we definitely had some challenges in some of the geographic locations. I remember fielding a complaint from a customer that was having problems up on Exmoor getting coverage. Driving to the site one night after work just to see where the site was, struggling to find the site because somebody had planted trees all the way around it. Probably that was fine 10 years ago. By the time I got there, those trees had actually reached the height of the mast and beyond. So I'd definitely get involved from that perspective. And I was also working very closely with the guys from the special projects team. So that might be putting coverage, for example, into Wembley Stadium, looking at the locations around the country that were going to get busy because of summer events, maybe Glastonbury, Tea in the Park, the Reading Festival, whichever those were, big sporting events as well, particularly things like, I don't know, Aintree, for example, for the Grand National, making sure the coverage was right for those types of areas. But then also working with businesses as well on where they needed coverage most as well, and had some fantastic meetings with people like for example, Great Western Railway and their exec team, working out how do we get coverage into sidings, how do we get coverage into places that they need, but were definitely hard to get to. So yeah, really enjoyable time dealing with those kind of things.
Yeah, very dynamic. And you think about there's going to be more people in a given location because of an event, let's say a sporting event or whatever the case may be. How do you have that capacity there to the scalability aspects as well? No, fascinating stuff.
Yeah,
and very interesting, I would think, if you think about the way it's changed. So, if you go to Aintree 20 years ago, you're talking about voice connectivity, really, aren't you? Now, you're not talking about voice connectivity, you're talking about data availability, because everybody is placing bets on their phones, as well as, in the I've never been to the Grand National, but I assume lots of bookmakers and things like that. But I imagine now there must be a huge requirement for data availability for those sorts of events.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at something like Glastonbury, where people want to stream or share instantly with their friends, their family, what they're seeing, and there's so much real time, streaming, live streaming, live messaging type services that are, the data volume has just exploded over time in an event like that.
Amazing.
But isn't it fantastic that you can, if one of your family members are there at those types of events, that you can almost place yourself in their shoes and see the event through their device. I do think that's fantastic.
Absolutely incredible. Chris, so obviously this is the Accession Service Management podcast, right? And we do an awful lot with the vendors, the providers of service management technologies, so ServiceNow, BMC, etc. We've talked quite a lot about customer expectation. We've talked a bit about the provision of services, but the way in which services have been managed, how has that changed? And I just I guess one of the things that we always see in this marketplace is the vendors themselves talking about all of the capabilities that their software can unlock, right? It's just interesting to get your feel on, how much has been unlocked by new service management features and capabilities, and how much is really about ways of working, right? And the people that now understand service provision better. It's an interesting sort of thing to see, to try and understand.
Look, I think there's been huge advances on both sides. I remember sitting in rooms writing SLAs years ago, and about the resolution times that were acceptable then, about how we'd manage our services, what capacity that we'd be able to put in, how quickly we'd be able to increase the capacity, so how far away we needed to think about those kind of capacity increases. Yeah, I think I remember billing services, for example, in back in Orange days. Thinking that we had to plan 12 months ahead by the time we could get the infrastructure in, that we could provision it, that we could provide the upgrades, etc. I look at my billing services now, and if I need more grunt, I can literally switch it on the fly now. So those services have definitely changed, and the infrastructure behind them have changed. But coming back to the service management vendors and the capability, I think now we're a million miles away from where we used to be from that perspective. If I'm buying a service management tool now, I'm thinking, okay, I'll have an inbuilt CMDB, so I'll know my asset set from within that, guaranteed. In fact, that's probably the first building block now that will go in. I'm able to manage all of my services, specify my SLAs, drag in monitoring, automate the ticket raising. I'm probably going to be able to do some form of AI ops as well, within that environment. I'm going to be able to look at self-healing. I'm going to be able to look at taking out a whole bunch of that manual effort that was there to try and keep these services going in the past. The control that we have now, and the ability with these systems to to be able to manage these services in a much better way than we ever could do doing this manually. We're miles ahead of where we were, certainly at the start of my career, and even you think of how things have evolved with the dawn of AI over the last 3-4 years. It would be hard to buy a solution in that space now without some kind of AI capability. Whether we're using that to its full effect yet, I would argue we're probably not. But the capability is there now to run those services in very different ways.
Yeah, we'll get on to the AI question. Let's not jump too far ahead. Don't worry, it's definitely coming. Tell us a bit about the relationship then. So it's obviously we're in this space, right? So it would be terrible to hear that the vendor capabilities haven't significantly impacted on the way services delivered. So, tick in the box. But I guess tell us a little bit about maybe how important the relationship is then with service management vendors, and how that impacts on your ability to sort of really leverage and introduce new capabilities to your services.
Yeah, Community Fibre, what we try and do is have the vendor as part of our team, and that really, for me, is quite critical, because the technology is fantastic, and the vendors will do a great job in terms of explaining the technology to you, but the application for me is the most important thing. So we can only really have the sort of relationship we want and the implementation of the technology in the way that we need it by having those vendors at the table with us, part of our virtual team. We spend a lot longer than we ever have done in terms of briefing the vendors on our roadmap, on our services, on how things work, on the expectations of our customers. All of those things, I feel the vendors have to know before they can do a really effective job with us. And actually, having that upfront investment in time and having those conversations is really paying dividends for us in terms of the way that when we come with requirements, the discussions that we can have in terms of how we fulfill and meet those requirements are quite different to how they were years ago, where there was a fixed piece of technology that did X number of things. These days, the vendors have got platforms at their fingertips rather than single pieces of technology. They're often super adaptable. They're often can be deployed in different ways. There's different modules. There's different capability. But having that relationship where you've got a base understanding of what the business does, of what the critical things are to move that business forward, of what that roadmap of activity is, I think is incredibly important to really have a good two-way conversation and get the vendor to bring things into that relationship that they would otherwise not.
Yeah,
they need to have that appreciation, don't they, of what it is you're trying to achieve. What are the outcomes?
Yeah,
you want.
But
to...
I think it's I think it's more than just the outcome of the project these days. I think it's more an outcome of the end business outcome and what the strategy, what the objectives are for the business as a whole, because I think there's more to offer than just a resolution to a problem or a delivery to a set of requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we, when we talk about this accession, right, we try and sort of couch, business outcomes in form of, say, customer experience, the way services are consumed, in terms of your business of agility, the way in which you are set up to manage change and manage change quickly, but managing risk at the same time, in terms of the productivity of your teams, so you are making sure your people are investing their time on high value activities, right? And then looking at the best practice around technology service delivery and thinking where else in the organization can we, can we leverage the same system of action.
Yeah.
And I think if you get your vendors, like you say, on that roadmap and it's driven from the business and not by the technologists, right, then you end up with the right outcomes, don't you?
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, and it is an investment of time to do that, and you have to have conversations to do that. You can't do that by providing some PowerPoint. You can't do that by providing a set of written requirements. It's just not enough. You have to have that vendor inside the tent, and they have to become a partner as opposed to a vendor. In my view, in my humble opinion.
No, absolutely. You think about talking about the customer expectations earlier, like it just needs to work, right? And that's the customer expectation I think that everybody has. It just needs to work, right? They don't particularly perhaps care about the hows and the whys and the wherefores, because there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes to enable that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Mm.
Yeah, I think
So,
yeah, and it's it's in its broadest sense and it's in its narrowest sense, isn't it? That knowing the overall business is one thing. Getting down to the detail of a particular service is still necessary as well.
yes.
How many customers are we billing? How many customers are we going to sell to over the next few months? How many people do we need to provision? What type of provisioning? The challenges are the same, I guess. The big thing for me is the movements and the pace is quicker in terms of change, and you have to be really on the game, I think, with that and understand that big picture to make sure you don't trip over yourself in those things.
For certain. So we talked, well, we touched on AI very briefly a moment or so ago, and fair to say that the last 2-3 years has been a real huge leap in the capability of AI and the general acceptance of AI. And it's something we talk about a lot, is how we can leverage those capabilities to, again, provide better experiences, better outcomes aligned with the business objectives and strategic objectives and so forth. What we're seeing and what we're hearing is that the expectation around how things are going to be delivered will potentially change as well, because people want to adopt that technology. From your perspective, Chris, perhaps you could share a view on, maybe give us an insight to your personal crystal ball. What do you think, or what do you foresee being kind of the outputs from that AI injection into services? How's that going to kind of manifest itself?
It's really interesting. If I look at AI in our own business now and where we're starting and what our strategy is, and give you a few comments on that, and I'll come back to the sort of services side next, if that's okay. We've started using AI in a number of places that you probably wouldn't necessarily expect as our first use cases. We've been using it in procurement for a while. The
Okay.
AI has got a fantastic ability to look at contracts, look at differences in contracts if you've got different versions, pick out risk in your entire contract set, and that was probably our first use case, actually. We followed that with some things in security. I think AI is incredible in security, picking out some of the pattern analysis, de-risking everything from your external attack face, as well as things like basic emails. Just its ability to understand what's there, what's coming into you, what risk and threat that may provide. I think security has some incredible use cases already. We then moved on to external help for our customers, and we use it extensively with our customers. And if you ever use our help solution at Community Fibre, you will be experiencing that. It's available on the web if you want to give it a try, but really quite interesting how you can use it there to personalize message and help coming back to a customer, even from something as simple as a search bar. But I just think this is the thin end of the wedge in terms of what's going to happen.
Mm.
We've been running POCs in a number of areas. What I would say is I think our strategy is to look at customer things next. So external customer facing things have to be next on our priority list. We also will then move on to our network and look at how AI can impact our network. And then we'll look at it from an internal efficiencies perspective and how we can make our business more efficient as a consequence. I think the interesting thing for me is whether we always know that we're interacting with AI. And I think the really good AI, you probably don't realize the interaction that you are having, whether that's whether that's with a system directly or whether that's with a bot or a voice bot. I think the really good ones, you will find it extremely difficult to tell whether you are interacting with a person or not. And I think that's something that's going to be quite interesting from a cultural perspective. I think the other thing is just in terms of its capability. If I think of a customer journey for us, maybe somebody phoning up with a broadband problem, I think the real interesting thing is how many applications of AI there could be through a single journey.
Mm-hmm.
So we should recognize what that customer is calling about in the first place, because we have a whole series of data, and the AI should be able to tell us whether they're likely to be calling about their network or billing or their service account or a new purchase or a product or something. I think then when you start to talk to an agent, assuming that you haven't diverted that customer using AI into a self-service or a digital channel, assuming they're talking to a person, you should be able to tell the sentiment of that call as it goes through. You should also have the AI listening and be able to tell that agent what the AI thinks the resolution to that problem is, to give those agents some real superpowers. I think the call as it's going along can be transcribed, so we can be taking notes on that call and understanding what that call was all about. The agent really shouldn't need to write up any notes on that call. I think at the end of that call, the AI should also be saying, what are the things that we've promised that customer?
Mm-hmm.
We've promised them a call back. We've promised them a resolution to this problem. We've promised to post them something. We've promised to send an engineer, whatever it is. All of that can be really effectively picked up, logged by the AI, so that the agent doesn't have to do that sort of thing. They can focus and concentrate on the conversation that they're having with the customer and maybe make that conversation better as well as a result and consequence. And then, the AI can also understand the sentiment. Did the customer like us? Were they happy with the resolution? Are there still problems? Should we call that customer in a couple of days just because of the way that they were feeling and the language that they were using during that call? So I think we really are at the thin end of the wedge from that perspective. And you apply that back into. Oh, go on, you go.
No, I was just going to say, but it sounds like you've adopted quite a lot of, and embraced it really, the AI capability there, and just from what you've been describing.
Yeah, we definitely know where we're going with it, and we've tried it, and it works, and therefore we will adopt. I would also say though, we've adopted things that resolve our use case rather than adopting AI as a technology.
Yeah,
we've used it because it's the right thing to do and a great application for it, and it's something that we think can improve our business, as opposed to adopting AI as a technology.
as a shiny new thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Chris, can I just have to say, I love what you've just described there, because and actually it echoes something that Gartner put out recently, which is that people need to stop thinking about capability like Gen AI as a shift left efficiency activity. That, yes, that's part of it, but you have to build your business case on something that's not just how much can we save, because that may not be clear. What you're talking about is how can we improve the service that we deliver to our customers, and the benefits that you might accrue from that improved service is actually what will underpin your business case. I have to say, you're one of the few, possibly maybe even the only organization that I've spoken to that's actually gone, right, we're going to use it through the customer journey. We're going to look at how we improve every single step of that customer journey.
Yeah, I think we are seeing, I guess, more and more information, studies, sales pitches on agentic AI, and I think we'll see more and more of that. But I do agree. This is about ethos. This is about trying to do the right thing for the customer, trying to introduce this brilliant new technology in a way that's going to improve the lives of our customers more so than just to use the technology itself. I also think that from a service perspective, and you look at the way that we need to resolve customers' problems, I do think from that perspective, things are changing as well. And if you focus on, are you solving that customer's problem first time? Are you solving it in such a way that it stays solved for a period of time and that customer doesn't have to call back in the next 30 days, 60 days? Are you solving it in a way that really makes the customer happy and has a good experience as a consequence of that interaction? That those things are far more valuable than, but will also lead to some of the other savings anyway.
Yeah.
We're super lucky. We're 4.6 on Trustpilot, and I believe if we can keep this ethos going and harness that new technology, that will stay high on Trustpilot, but also in the eyes of our customers as well.
I wouldn't call it luck. But it sounds like you're doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, luck's definitely the wrong word for that. I'll probably get shot for luck, but yeah, that's right.
We'll edit that out. Don't worry, Chris.
Yeah. So I think you've told us, I mean, just as a sort of a wrap up, really, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about Community Fibre and how you're setting up for the future, but it sounds like you've given us a really good insight into that already.
Yeah, I think I can just add a few things as well. Again, in terms of ethos, what we are trying to do is look at where does the customer have to call us at the moment because the customer's got a problem. We want to get away from reactive as much as possible, and we sort of see that in two steps. Reactive has to become proactive first off, and at least be for us to be on the front foot with the customer to try and recognize and understand issues. But we've got to get to a point where we're preemptive. If you look at the amount of data that we've got on our networks, if you look at the great service tooling that we've got that runs alongside that, if you look at the great communication channels we've got with our customers, then we should be fixing issues in the network. We should be fixing issues in billing for our customers and maybe telling them that we've done that as opposed to waiting for them to call. And I think that's going to be the mark of a differentiated service-based organization going forward, that you get that real preemptive service where, dear Mr. Williams, I'm really sorry to have to tell you had a bit of a problem with your network last Friday. You won't have recognized it because it happened at 3 o'clock in the morning, and by 5 we'd fixed it for you. But yeah, we'd like to tell you about it just so that you know. And please be assured we're always watching, and we really want to keep up that level of service for you because we know how critical it is.
Yeah,
and that's an amazing experience, right?
It really is. But when you get we've noticed that we've overcharged you by 15p.
Yeah.
I'd give you the 15p back just for the fact that you're actually watching.
Yeah.
And on top of it, right? Because then I know the next time I trust you.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So more to do definitely for us. Lots. We're young. We're growing. We're growing really quickly, which has pains on its own. But yeah, we do genuinely believe that we need to get to these kind of experiences to make sure that our customers like us for the long term.
Well, it sounds like you've got exactly everything you need to have in place, and the plans and the foresight to go ahead and achieve that, Chris.
Thank you.
But just based on what you shared with us today, I think certainly get that feeling. Chris, thank you so much for spending time talking with us today. Really, really great conversation. To our listeners, if there's anything you'd like to find out about Community Fibre, please either get in touch with someone myself or reach out directly to Chris. Like I said earlier in the conversation, we'll drop a link to the website for those who'd like to take a look.
Check out the bot.
Check out the AI bot. Yes, and if you can tell it's AI, Chris has promised you'll win a prize. All right. Thank you very much for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Chris, thanks once more.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.